Content Catchup.
Friends and enemies, welcome to episode 20 of the Content Catchup. Barks in the flesh.
Jules in the flesh, yes, I'm here, right next to you, side by side. Just feel more of a team, don't we?
Yeah, it's also easier for me to punch you in the face if you say anything dumb.
Yeah, that's fair enough. I'm recording it, so if that happens, enjoy it, folks.
Oh!
All right. No, this week you reached out to a person you've worked with, and I virtually met him, Luke Mason.
The one, the only.
Pioneer.
Pioneer.
Yeah.
He didn't like that, but
We liked it.
we
I
liked it.
it.
We're going to stick with it. If you don't know Luke, he's we intro him a bit better in the actual show, but he's one of the originals in the sports digi landscape in Australia, particularly within the AFL, and he's done a whole shitload of work.
Yep.
I don't think we need to dwell on it too much, Bucks. I think we should just get straight into it.
Let's let the talking do the talking, if you will.
Well done. Anyway,
Here it is.
here it is.
Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another episode. Pretty special episode today, Jules. As you can see, we're obviously together in person, but even better, we are joined by the wonderful Luke Mason. Welcome, Luke. How you going?
Thunderous applause.
Hey guys, great to join you on this very illustrious podcast. It's you can see the traction it's been gaining week to week, so honour and a privilege to join you.
Now, Luke already deserves a medal because Barks and I have been fucking around with the audio and video of this for the last half an hour.
We're half an hour late.
Yeah, so Luke, you already are like favourite visitor. Guest.
Well, in an ideal world, we'll actually have Luke with us physically, so one step at a time, don't get
Yeah, that's true. Hey, actually, do you mind just driving down in?
Yeah, God, it's within the radius, so yeah. Easy.
Now, Luke, before we get any further, I just want to give everyone a bit of a background as to who you are, because for many people who don't know Luke, you should. He's one of the pioneers in the digital space.
That was my line.
Yeah, well, I took it. You can do without it.
Yeah, sorry, continue.
Yeah. Don't interrupt me. It's already hard enough because I'm getting like 2 levels of audio. But anyway, Luke started off at Collingwood, I reckon about 10, 11 years ago. Would that be about right?
Yeah. Scarily enough, that's correct. Yeah.
Yes.
Full time.
So when that happened, Luke would have been second or third in line to get the keys at Collingwood to digital. So when you think about it, it's from people like Luke that our job here exists today.
Well,
So
he literally paved the way.
he did pave the way, like get down on his knees, laid some pavers.
Okay.
But from there,
I've got to say.
from there, took a bit of a break, went into the Melbourne Renegades, did some cricket, went to the AFL, did some casual work, then had the biggest one of them all in my art, worked the International T20 Women's World Cup.
Huge.
Huge. And then a little spell at the Preston Bullants, which we only know because it popped up in our Facebook as Luke Mason has been added as an admin. So then a bit more at the Renegades and finally at the AFL.
Yeah, it's been a long and winding journey, Jules. You put it pretty well. So basically, there's been a few different things, particularly in the last couple of years, which are probably more contract-based and casual roles, which is, I guess, a bit of a deliberate approach because going back some way now, I started off full-time at Collingwood, as you were saying, nearly 10 years ago at the end of 2011. Prior to that, I'd probably started getting involved there as far back as probably 5 or 6 years earlier. Through high school, there were a couple of great people there at the time. Clinton Bowen, who, when we talk about pioneers, these guys are real digital pioneers. Clinton Bowen, who I think went on to Carlton and Hawthorn, but he founded the Collingwood video channel amongst the Collingwood FC website, relaunched in about the mid-2000s, and Nick Hewlett, who's an amazing guy who looked after me so well, and then Jonathan Bernard, who was my manager when I began. They really did a lot of the groundwork and heavy lifting in the very, very early days of social, and I think tweets would have, been effectively broken English, saying, trying to use all the text message or SMS speakers back in the day to try and get a message across. You might tweet once or twice a day if you're lucky. I essentially did a lot of stuff with the VFL component of the club from about 2008 to 2011, and then at the end of 2011, an opportunity came up full time as uni was finishing, and I think it was very much right place, right time, and I was able to start there at that point and finish at the end of 2018, coming off the back of the grand final. And I think from the best way to describe it would be, in starting, there were 3 of us in the team. There was head of digital, who had a heavy focus on the club TV show, which was on Fox Footy at the time, which was a really exciting venture. Just going back 2012, 13, 14 that ran. And we had the head of video as well. And then myself, who was a bit of a website and social all-rounder. And by the end, there was 12 or so people in that team. A lot of the video had expanded. There was a marketing component that had come in by then, EDMs, supporter comms, everything you could probably imagine. So it's been interesting watching that evolution and seeing it again over the last couple of years. It's only got bigger despite COVID, and I'm sure there's been a lot of clubs impacted by that in particular. But I think you can see it starting to hopefully build back up again. And I think everyone understands the importance of these roles more than ever. I think COVID probably shone a torch on that, and you guys are living examples of it.
Yeah, it's really interesting that like you just gave us about 20 different segues to go on to the first part of our chat, but just like the world we live in now, and that is our day-to-day life that you experienced the beginning of it. So I can't wait to dive into that shortly, but to get to know you a bit more as Luke Mason, not just the pioneer of our industry, but we like to do a quick 1-minute brief, which is basically get to know you. So let's get straight into it. Do you have a nickname or favourite nickname maybe?
Oh, nothing too special, Michael. I reckon it sounds weird when you say your own nickname out loud.
It does a bit, doesn't it?
But I'd say you could predict them. Lukey, Maso, Lukey Mace from some quarters. There's Nicky. There's 3 of us in the world. There's Nicky Dale, there's Stevie J, and there's Lukey Mace. So
I love that. And that's our promo.
That one.
Well, Jules has appropriately titled this run sheet a moment with Maso, so we're sticking with that.
Sounds good to me.
For those that don't know, it sounds like you've had about 15 different job titles, but what is your current job title?
I'm currently social media manager at the AFL.
Nice one. Do you have a favourite bit of content you've worked on over your 30-year journey?
It's a great question. I reckon we should talk more about this stuff as a collective, as an industry, because there's so much good stuff that gets done, but we move so quickly that we never get a chance to reflect.
Yeah, you just move past it.
Some of the great stuff. Exactly. It moves so quickly. I think the main one for me would be in 2018 for the Big Freeze at the G with Neil Danaher's Fight MND Foundation. Collingwood had a guy called Murray Swinton who reached out, or someone close to him got in touch with a member of the club and put him in touch with everyone and his family. So he was suffering from MND, and quite sadly he would pass away later in the year. But he was a massive Collingwood supporter. I just noticed the sun beaming in the eyes. I'll move out of that way. 2 seconds, sorry guys.
Put your shades on. Be the coolest interview we've ever had.
What's that, sorry?
Put your sunglasses on. It'll be the coolest interview we've ever had.
Speed dealers out. So start that one again. Murray Swinton was a firefighter who came down with MND. He was also a massive Collingwood supporter who created scrapbooks for the club since he was a kid in the 70s. And he and his family had a mutual contact at the club who managed to put him onto our media team at the start of 2018. And we filmed his story ahead of the Big Freeze at the G with Neil Danaher that year in 2018. And filming Murray's story in the boardroom up at the Glass House was, I think, one of the most powerful things I've been able to bear witness to and experience, because the way he told his story, despite the physical duress he was under and obviously the emotional anguish of it, was amazing. And to have his 2 sons and his beautiful wife Tracy there in the room, and they were all quite emotional as he told his story, both about his situation, his love for the club. I think there were about 3 of us working on that one from the digital team at that point in time, and pretty quickly you realise it wasn't going to be the run-of-the-mill sort of discussion. You can still see this, I guess, the softness of his eyes as he described his situation, but his love for Collingwood and how, regardless of his situation, he still had something to look forward to with watching the Pies every week. And this was filmed about a week before round 1 of that year, and Collingwood had missed the finals for 4 years in a row. I think the last question we put to him was, is anything you'd say to the current playing group of today? And his line was something like, it was pretty poignant. It was, do the best you can while you can. Good luck for the year, boys. I hope you win it. And coming from, I think, 13th on the ladder, by mid-season, Collingwood was well and truly in the hunt. Even though it probably wasn't being discussed broadly at the time, I think there was a real sense there was something building, and they were able to get Murray into the rooms on the pre-match before the big freeze against Melbourne on Queen's birthday, and Nathan Buckley and Jeff Walsh and Nick Maxwell organised for him to be there with his family in his wheelchair with his Freeze M&D beanie on, and he spoke softly and directly to Bucks and the playing group, and you could hear a pin drop. You could see the total focus from the guys on him and hanging off every word. And he presented Bucks his firefighting helmet for Bucks to go down the slide wearing on behalf of Murray. And that was just so special. You could feel a real charge of emotion and energy through the room as a result. And I think from memory, Bucks might have written that quote from Murray at the end of that video on the whiteboard pre-game. I remember he was saying something like, good luck for the year, boys. I hope you win it. Bucks' reference was, I think he means we can win the whole thing. He means to win the whole thing this year. Let's talk about it. We can do this. And as obviously the story got told after that, Collingwood came within a minute 50 of winning it, and Murray was able to make it to the grand final, which was really special. And he came into the club a couple more times throughout the year with his family, and was still there during grand final week at training, which I know was really special. And then he passed away within a week or so of the grand final. So that was that's a long story to be told in that one, but that was really special. And I think that was a clear example of how things can transcend the game itself and the power of storytelling, but also the connection that can form, I think, within a business and a group of people. And I no doubt that Murray's story struck a chord with everyone involved that year and added such an important layer to what Collingwood was able to do on and off the field that season.
I guess that's like ultimately why we all get involved. Like the emotion of sport is so powerful, regardless of whether it's something so meaningful like that or the emotion that fans have towards the game, the good, bad and the ugly. But that's what our jobs is about, like finding those stories, telling them, making sure that we keep pushing emotion to the top of everything that we do. That's a beautiful story.
Yeah, I think just to add on to that, it's probably a really good example of, sounds like a real eye-opening experience, Luke, but the type of stories that we are exposed to is working in sport, and it's so far away from sport in terms of what is sort of bigger than sport, but it's also very close to sport, and you could, through what you sort of were explaining, and it was really well said by you, but you could see how close and how important sport was to him. So, thanks for sharing that. That's really well said.
No, absolutely. It's a great one to talk about because I think, as you're saying, it does link to, you can say it's only a game, and it is, but that's the beauty of it, the fact that this perspective sort of goes both ways. It is only a game. So it teaches you to relax about a result or an outcome in work, but you also realise how privileged you are and how special it is to do what you do. So I think it actually feeds both sides of it really well. And I'm sure you've both had your examples like that where you've come into contact with people who've really resonated with you and the clubs you're working at.
Yeah, I often say that when people ask me sort of about like my job, about like what favourite thing working at a Carlton, it's not the sport. Like it is the sport, but it's not the sport. It's what's away from the sport. So that's a really good example. That was a real nice sort of question, but we'll quickly transition to the last one of this brief. Do you have a best non-work skill? What is Luke good at apart from work?
Great question. Probably not a lot.
We've had that answer a few times.
Yeah. Well, hopefully, if I was being ambitious, I would say honing my Ross Lyon impersonation.
Oh, go on, please.
You can't not give us it now.
Oh, well, Jules, I don't know what you're alluding to there. This is a STEM podcast, and I don't know if I can come up with tend to be like Ross Lyon if I can't, work on my application, dedication, preparation. It's really privileged to be on me, but I don't want to take this any further. So that's what it sits.
Oh boy,
that's brilliant.
Can I ask why the hell?
Yeah.
Can I ask why the hell you started doing that?
Oh dear. Look, let's jump into the questioning now, Ross. So you touched on it a bit before, speaking about your background, so we probably don't need to jump back into that. But I think one of the biggest questions I have for you, having been involved in the industry for so long, how have you seen the industry as a whole and the landscape and the demand on sports digi staff kind of change over the years?
Yeah, it's a good subject, this one, I reckon, Jules, because it's pretty hard to quantify, and I think the answer, there's a lot you can probably give in this answer, and everyone's experience is pretty unique. But I think at this, like, I can only speak from my own experience, but with as the world gradually onboarded itself onto social media, I think it became mainstream. When I guess around the time of maybe 2011 to 13, perhaps, when originally something might get put up on Twitter and it was seen as, an area just to have a bit of a laugh. You had journalists who might have broken news, but it wasn't, something said on Twitter wasn't seen as the be-all and end-all, whereas now someone says something on there. Look at the President of the United States can change the world off the back of Twitter. So that's probably the best example where it's become such a part of everyone's lives and such a mainstream part that the demand has only increased with that. And, 10 years ago, Instagram was barely in its infancy. Facebook was still very much post a status and check in at wherever you were at a given time. And Twitter was only 140 characters and was still very primitive. So now you've got those that are all huge machines that drive so much commercially as well as editorially. And then you've got TikTok's come into the mix. Yeah. YouTube is just keeps getting bigger and bigger. There's so much to it. So that means that the demand, I think, on everyone increases. And then after that, I think there was a bit of, if you look at footy, there was probably a bit of an arms race in a sense when it came to digital. And I think it was really exciting in the sort of early to mid part of the last decade, where everyone was, I think, producing great work across clubs and really challenging each other and inspiring each other to do great things. And probably from my point of view, I was one who was more to do more. And probably learnt in recent times that more is sometimes less.
Yeah.
You're just churning things out for the sake of it. The purpose behind it gets lost. And, if you're doing things purely just to keep ticking a box, you're wasting your time. That's probably pretty obvious, but it probably took me a little while to balance my own sense of what the demand should be. I think it definitely is a challenging job. So when you see the comments saying, has the intern run the account today, or things along those lines, it might be a kid fresh out of uni that gets chipped at in a comment. It's nowhere near like that. It's a real skill set. The demands are real, and the pressures can come from all sorts of angles inside and outside of business. So I think it's great to see these roles get more respect as time goes by, and podcasts like this are really good too, because they shine the torch on what these jobs are really like, and take people behind the curtain of the realities of what you both do day to day. A lot of people in the industry, and that's got to help. That can only help more people who are coming through doing journalism or media degrees right now and trying to find their way in the industry.
Oh, for sure. And like nowhere else would in your first job, would you have your work exposed to so many people and so many violent people as well, and have so much out of your control as well. Like you could be producing the best work, and if your team's not delivering on the field, you're going to cop it regardless. So that's a really good point.
100%. And you are at the mercy of the on-field.
Yeah.
Just to a large degree at a club, but there's still things you can control around it. But ultimately you could have the best laid plans of all time. But if the team has a shocker on the weekend, you're going to have to put it all on ice for another 7 days, or it may never see the light of day. It'd be a great segment one day to see all the best work that was
cutting room floor.
Never got used. Brownlow graphics,
That's true,
hopefully
actually.
graphics, all that
Trade
stuff.
deals.
Trade deals, it never went through.
Yeah. That'd be like a gallery almost to Acme. You heard it here first. It's happening.
I think it's hilarious how, going back to your point about Twitter, Luke, like 20, however many years ago, you Collingwood, I'm gonna start using this platform called Twitter. Might use it for whatever purposes. 20 years down the track, the president of America is that, like, that's the way like, imagine telling someone that, he's going to put together like 120 characters and that's probably how he's going to communicate with all of us. It happens so quickly.
I just imagine some of those initial discussions from like the first 2 or 3 people to do social media at a club, trying to convince the CEO going like, hey, we're going to stop print. Why? We've got this new thing called Twitter and we can communicate to all our fans wherever they are, whatever time, but we can only use 140 characters.
Yeah.
And then just going, why the fuck are we doing that?
I think it'd be so easily seen as like a bit of a joke. Like you show them the little blue bird of like tweeting things out. Like, what is this Twitter? Like, what is that?
Imagine trying to explain TikTok to those guys. It'd be hilarious.
It's not worth it, I reckon.
No. So that's sort of Jules touched on the beginning, but we'll go to the sort of the middle part of this story, we'll call it. So you were at Collingwood for a long time. I guess you obviously felt like part of the furniture there, but then you made the decision to sort of step away from that, move away something that's been such a huge part of your life. Maybe talk to us a bit about that decision and what brought it on.
Yeah, it was a really, really hard thing to do, Michael. Probably a whole range of factors came into it in the end, but if I'm being honest, I probably just knew that it was time for something different. And the longer I stayed there, the harder it was going to be to leave, because it was like an extra family really, and an environment I'd grown up in many ways. So the longer I stayed, the harder it was going to be. So I reached a point where a few things lined up in my favour. I had a bit of time up my sleeve through long service leave, and I just felt like it was probably just the right time. A whole lot of things came together to say, if I didn't make the move now, it's just going to get harder down the track. So end of 2018, decided to make that call, ideally take a bit of time off over summer with that long service leave and jump in the next thing. A really challenging decision, because you're also walking away from a lifestyle with a job like this, and a way of life where you're constantly connected, and you're constantly riding the roller coaster of a story internally with the club and all the different people in there. So, all those connections, you never lose those connections. You're still handing back the keys to something that you really enjoy. So, definitely wasn't an easy decision, but definitely the right one. It was the best way to grow. And then fortunately I had another 7 or 8 months to bide my time in. I picked up glandular fever afterwards, so it wasn't, in the end, it probably worked out really for the best. It just gave a lot of time to do some things I hadn't done before, just to rest and get back to full health and get set to dive into the next chapter. So all things do happen for a reason, and very grateful with the way it played out in the end.
I think like a follow-up question to that, would you have done it differently if you had the second chance?
In terms of
leaving, getting that time to refresh, regardless of you probably wouldn't want glandular fever again, but
good point, Jules.
Have that time, like 8 months completely away from sports and the demand and all that. Would you have done it differently if you had the second chance?
No, to be honest, I wouldn't. And I was fortunate there were a few things in my favour which allowed me to have that time and not, I guess, have to fret too much about diving straight into the next thing. So I was very fortunate. No, to answer the question, Jules, I wouldn't. Obviously, it'd be nice to know things in advance so then you can get your head around it. But no, that aside, I wouldn't change it, because I think that period helped me understand a bit more about who I am and what I wanted to do professionally and in a life sense as well, things that I valued, and health is obviously one part of that. So no, I wouldn't change it for the world. Even if things are hard at the time, it's still worth it.
Yeah, for sure. And I think one of the things what you were saying, like it gets harder and harder to leave. How do you keep pushing yourself within the same boundaries if you don't get yourself out? Realize, look at it from above, see what you've actually been doing for the last 10 years and say, this is what I like, this is what I don't like. I don't want to be writing tweets every day, but I really like the planning of this. How do I do that, but do it somewhere else?
Yeah.
Yeah, just to echo that point, it's so true. You've got to, I probably maxed out in my role a bit there too. In terms of growth and development, in that role, I was probably going to be doing similar again the next year, which was great, but was I growing? Probably not. So the time had definitely come, and it's probably going with logic over emotion, perhaps.
Yeah.
Try and use that part of my brain rather than the emotional one in the end. So, yeah, it's just so important to keep challenging yourself and doing new things. It's not to say you can't pin the one job or place for decades if that works for you and you're growing and, you know, the role keeps evolving with you. But purely in my case, it was time to do something different, and yeah, loved every second there, love all the people there, and yeah, we could probably be here for hours if I was end up singing the praises of some of the people in the place and some of the madness of the stories that go on. So loved every second. It certainly has shaped me for the next part of my life and will stay forever.
Because part of the reason was, my understanding, Luke, I don't know if you want to talk about it, was a bit of burnout, wasn't it? Should we touch on that a bit or not really?
Yeah. Look, I was, to be honest, Michael, I was probably a bit burnt out, and that's something that I brought on myself, really. It was a great learning thing in the end. I was someone who probably struggled to switch off around that time, and so you balance, you talk about balancing your identity through living your life through work versus work being one part of your life. I definitely let work consume me way more than I should have. So it just meant that I wasn't great at turning my mind off and stepping away at the right times. I know these jobs do dictate that you got to be online across weekends and out of hours, and that's fine. But just having those things in place to know when it's time to walk away or time to log off for the day, that was something that I struggled with, certainly, and that certainly just came from me in the end. And also, I think the value of knowing what to say no to or yes but. That was something that I learned through that period of time where you want to please people and do the right thing, so you say yes and you try and do the best thing, but often that means you might be overloading yourself or you're not going to do that job as well as that person requires. So that was a great experience, really, in the end. That was something I was able to reflect on in that period of time when I was a bit crook, and was able to think, wherever things go next, just keep the balance and remember to look after other people in the process too. So if I had the chance to deal with people, make sure I could impart some of those lessons of not burning yourself or cooking yourself by doing too much in too short a space of time. But it's one thing to say, it's another thing to actually do it. So the most important thing is actually walking that talk.
It's so difficult to do it, and I think a big part of what you just said is it's okay. It's fine to say no and learn to say no for the people that are out there that want to get in this industry or are in this industry. But I guess a quick one, continue on this path with burning out. It's such a big part of it, and some of the listeners might not know what that starts to feel like. Are there any early signs of feeling like, okay, this is getting ahead of me, or I need to sort of dial it back a bit to not get to that point of totally burning out, if that makes sense? It might be a bit of a difficult one to answer.
No, that's a great question. I reckon the one for me that was most pronounced, was memory. I reckon I was fine with memory up until from the age of 6 to 21. I can still tell you what I might have done on a given day. Was not quite as strong as that, but pretty solid. But then after that, a lot of it just felt like a blur of colour and noise. And I think that's probably the same for a lot of people in their job. But I just found that little things I'd start to not forget, but it just wouldn't be as instinctive as it should have been. And this is very short-term stuff. And I know people can say that happens to everyone. That's probably just the aging process doing its thing. But when something doesn't feel quite natural to you. And that was probably one of them where it's like, oh, that doesn't feel quite right. I normally think I'm a bit sharper on that sort of thing than what I might be right now. That was probably one of the main ones. And
that's huge.
I'm trying to think of other specifics. it's probably just being able to check in with yourself and know it's time to have a breather. It's literally walk away from your computer for 5 minutes, grab a drink, get outside. Have you been outside today? Yes or no? And the main thing too, just get this is life stuff, but just get you sleeping consistent where you can, eat consistently, exercise consistently. I think having that in a good network of family and friends around you, just to turn your brain off your job, doesn't matter whether it's digital or otherwise. That was probably part of what I learned. Value that part of your life and make sure you do balance, and then manage your time really well too. And that's something I've always got to be mindful of, managing time efficiently. Not letting things overcommit or drag out.
I think one of the other warning signs you start to see is that you become really like agitated. Like your phone will go off, and it could be your friend, it could be your family, it could be like
agitated by your colleague.
Yeah, colleagues, yeah, right. Like it could be anything, and you just look at your phone and you're like, I don't have the energy to deal with this, and it could just be like a small message saying, "Oh, what's going on? Do you want to go do something?" And you're just like, I've spoken to people all day today.
Yeah.
My phone goes off 9 times out of 10. I just don't want to do it.
No, it's great. That memory point is crazy. Like I think that's a really good tip, because you might you're used to so used to being organized and knowing what's going on, and then you think back to, wait a minute, I missed that, where I'd normally throughout my whole career I wouldn't have missed that. That's a really important one.
Let's pick it up from where we were, Luke, and everyone listening at home. We had a small intermission because, as you know, Barks and I are tight asses and we don't pay for Zoom.
You don't need to bring it up every episode, though. That's the only issue I have.
I just like reminding people how cheap we are. Okay. But anyway, so after your break, you kind of recovered a little bit. Hopefully, it sounds like you've gotten over your burnout a little bit more and learnt to watch for the warning signs for that. Did you always think you were going to get back into Digi Sports and pick up where you left off almost?
I think I did. Yeah, I knew that was always something that I love sport. I love digital. It's the perfect match, and very grateful really to be living in a time like this where there are roles that match that level of interest and skill. When 20 years earlier, God knows what half of us would have been doing. Will we have been able to live the dreams that we have and experience what we have? Probably not, or in a very different way to what we have. So, yeah, that was always definitely part of it. I did notice too, probably a bit of a trend through the football industry in my last 12 or 18 months there, that there were quite a few more people who were being hired in senior roles who had non-footy experience as well as footy experience. And just thought that was quite interesting to see that there were different perspectives coming in and people who had broader perspectives, I guess, on working life than just football or even just sport. So that was something that definitely informed my decision. Funnily enough, I haven't had a full-time sort of role outside of sport to this point in time. But I was able to get a little bit of experience in that with some freelancing sort of work through COVID, which was really good. But yeah, I think to answer the original question, to get back into sport was always something I was looking to do.
Don't look at it as though you've never had any experience in anything else. You're a specialist now, which is what everybody wants in the industry. But from going to AFL and going from something so traditional as the AFL, and I suppose Collingwood as well, we all work for traditional style clubs here, so there's no shame in that. How did you go then adjusting to the world of the Big Bash, which is a completely different audience, and working for the Melbourne Renegades? And did you have to change your content approach a hell of a lot when you did that?
I reckon I did, Jules, a little bit. You might come in with preconceived ideas to a role pretty quickly. You realise that there are some things you couldn't have anticipated or planned for, which is part of the exciting part, and that's one of the best things about the Melbourne Renegades. And to be honest, I'm not just saying this, I've said it to you off air as well. Like I was very fortunate to come in and work there off the back of the platform that you developed in your time at the Renegades, and the style of voice, the tone, and just the way it interacts with people, the way that you're able to separate the Renegades online accounts and social accounts from even the rest of the Big Bash, let alone other sports, was so profound. And that made my life very easy coming into that role. The tone was created, and our manager there, both you and I know quite well, Simon Conway, was outstanding in really fostering that and encouraging that. So yeah, it was very different because cricket's a different sport. Big Bash is such a different competition as well. And as you said about the tradition, Big Bash clubs aren't weighed down. Weighed down is probably the wrong term, but they're not impacted by tradition and by the level of generational expectations that the traditional Australian football clubs have or other sporting clubs have. It's new, it's targeted at a younger audience. It encourages and forces you to think differently and act differently in your job, which is great. That's across both the WBBL and the BBL. And yeah, I really loved the experience of working on both. And unfortunately, the Renegades, I think, won the wooden spoon in the 2 BBL years that I worked there. They made finals in one of the WBBL seasons. But yeah, from a BBL point of view, the fact that the Gades, and this is again a tribute to you, Jules, and to Simon Conway, were able to build, Chris Gergley as well, the head of marketing for a long time, able to build a brand and voice that was able to separate itself from on-field results and transcend whatever happened. That made life so much easier in the tough times because fans expected and anticipated something different and quirky and funny and self-deprecating and a little bit edgy from the Renegades accounts regardless. So it meant we were losing, but we could almost laugh with a little bit of dark comedy about ourselves that, geez, we are struggling today, but let's play Sandstorm again.
Quick one for both of you. So what I gather from there is the cricket landscape, you can have a bit more freedom to get a bit more cheek and tone into your voice. Do you know why that is, or what was the decision to have a bit of cheek behind the Renegades personality? Maybe that's one for you more, Jules, but both of you.
Well, this isn't an interview for me, but
no, it's interesting for the listeners.
My thing was I love cricket and I'm a big fan of it, but I don't know cricket on a level that a traditional cricket fan would know.
Okay.
So to me, my strength wasn't speaking to the actual play itself because I could see when it was a big hit or a nice catch or a good wicket. I didn't know like the terms or anything like that. I still couldn't tell you a cover drive from I could tell you a pull shot actually, but I can't tell you what a cover drive is.
I have zero idea what these terms are, Luke. I don't know anything about cricket. So what you're saying about your personality is more for the me's of the world. Sort of.
And Luke, maybe you can jump in here as well, but Big Bash isn't for your traditional cricket audience. It's for families and it's for younger kids and it's about being fun, right? And as soon, take away the performance. And again, I think that's another thing is that people aren't tied up in the emotion of it as much. It's a seasonal sport where people come, it's summer, they can bring the whole family. They know it's going to be a safe environment. They don't care whether they go home with the Renegades winning or Renegades losing, as long as they're entertained and they've had a good night.
Yeah,
that's the biggest thing. And I think that should flow over into your social media as well, like recognizing shit performance, whatever. But as long as they put on a show, that's the biggest thing.
Yeah. Would you agree, Luke?
Yeah. I think that's in large part the case. I know the club would want to do things a bit differently there. They'd want to, I think one of the main goals in a longer term sense, I'm guessing, would be to have that generational support where it's the passion's felt as much as it is from the fans themselves towards their BBL club as they are towards their AFL club in terms of their care for win or loss. But I think on the whole, you're absolutely right, Jules. It is about, in some senses, entertainment with the side of cricket, as well as cricket, the side of entertainment. They complement each other really well. And I think when the Big Bash is done well, it's as good a day as you'll have at any sport. And the Renegades match days at Marvel were great fun as well, even when the team was struggling on the field. You just didn't know what you were going to get. And I think one of the great jobs of our roles were that we're able to really highlight and hero some of the characters within the team. I know some of those nicknames that you come up with, Jules, really stuck over a period of time with President Nabi and Kane Richardson being the man with the best hair and the best beard in the BBL. Just finding the point of difference for each player was huge, and it was able to really make them relatable, perhaps to an audience that didn't know much about them otherwise. And I think it's something that we can do across any sport, really learn from that and hero the guys in almost a cartoon or superhero kind of way.
I think that's it. That's a really it's something that I think is happening more. Like you're seeing kids these days not so much support a whole club, but they'll support an athlete.
Almost the character.
The character, like LeBron James, wherever he goes, he's going to have supporters regardless of whether he's playing for the Lakers, the Heat, Cavs.
I agree.
And same with who's someone that's moved recently, like Joe Danaher. He's going to have this generation of kids that just will follow him wherever he goes. And like luckily Cripper is staying at Carlton, but if he were to go to...
Is that breaking news on Content Catchup?
Breaking news, it's broken. But like if he were to go to another team, the same thing, right? Like you'd have all these kids that just love watching this person play.
Yeah.
So these are the heroes. The team is not the hero. The team is just like a platform for them. So I think like that's a lot of credit as well we were given a lot of freedom from Simon, number one, shout out, and number two, Chris Gergley, who was a master of just like saying, nah, fuck it, let's do it.
Yeah, I love that. You could have all the great ideas in the world, but you got to be allowed to do that. That's just the realistic approach of having someone to allow you to do it.
So true.
Shouts both of your team.
Shout out.
Let's 100%. And I'll just jump in there too. Sorry, just quickly from a football and AFL point of view, I think it does apply there and is more and more. Remember going back probably 5 or 6 years ago, people like Gary Ablett Jr. and Lance Franklin would have had Facebook and Instagram followings that completely outsized club ones. I don't know if that might still be the case for some of them now. I'm sure Dustin Martin would be one in that category. So it does go to show that there's such interest in these huge personalities. And I think regardless of how they want to use their social media, where you're at clubs or competitions can really use that to everyone's benefit, just to grow the game and to celebrate the good. People will love Ablett whether he goes to Gold Coast or Geelong. I don't think people turn their backs on Buddy because he just went to Sydney. They still want to watch the biggest show in town. So, yeah, there's a lot to be said for that, I think, across all sport.
Yeah, it's a great point. Let's finish up on, we'll stick in the world of cricket, and as described by Julian as the pinnacle of, well, I don't know if you called it Luke's career, but international T20.
I'm not going to tell something like it's the pinnacle of his career. I just think it's a cool event.
Yeah. So not many of us have sort of worked in an international event like yourself with the women's international T20 final. So talk to us about it. I myself aren't massively into cricket, but what was the experience like?
Yeah, it was a really cool and different experience because it was a group that was formed purely to help create drive and see through the process of the event. So once those 2 World Cups, this is before COVID, once those 2 World Cups were run and won, the job is over. The organisation, ceases in its role. So I was only there for a handful of weeks in a contractor role around the tournament itself. It was great to see the focus that all these people who'd worked on it for 18 months, 2.5 years, had to really deliver something special for the Australian public, and particularly with the Women's World Cup as well, which is the one that ended up going ahead in Australia. There was the big campaign about filling the G and getting the biggest ever crowd to an international women's sporting event. So that was a real driver, I think, for everyone, and a real motivator. And it was a really good group of people to work with too, super motivated, whether it was from marketing or comms or web content, really motivated, worked really well together as a team, and you could see the sense of pride in them when they could see the different crowd results that were really positive and the ticket sales for the match at the G. And for the match itself, that was really, well, the event as much as the match, it was really special. There was obviously Katy Perry there and 86K from memory inside the MCG. And it was quite unique in a way because that was a Sunday night. Then by Friday the 13th, so 5 days later, the Grand Prix was cancelled and Melbourne went into shutdown. It was quite surreal to think about. There was a little bit of talk about COVID in the lead up impacting this, but there was nothing that was actually saying, oh, we're going to have to reconsider anything. It was, be mindful this thing exists, but I think we'll be fine. There were people, queued up outside the G for miles. I reckon might have been an issue or two with one of the gates with ticketing just for half an hour. So there were quite large queues outside it. And you think of that compared to what we saw at the Grand Prix days later. And then with every other sport and walk of life around the country and the world within hours of that, it's a crazy thought. And I'm really glad that it got underway and it took place as it did, because it would have been, such a shame for that not to have gone ahead, given the work that went in and the build up and what the end product was, with Australia winning in front of 86,000 fans and Katy Perry playing to a huge international audience. It's pretty surreal to look back on, actually. So I was able to do a couple of days. I had a very short-term contract after that at the Grand Prix. So to watch that, yes, about as short as a short-term contract could ever get. Witnessing that one get shut down was quite something, really. And to see that, I think it was Lewis Hamilton who spoke to the media on the Thursday and really seemed to put on the agenda the fact that this thing might get shut down was jaw-dropping really at the time. Just watching how all that played out. I remember driving home and tuning into SEN, and there was Jared Waitley was on there all day talking about, this is Melbourne's experience with an international pandemic and et cetera, et cetera. It's quite weird to think that was the dawn of, I guess, the time that's led us to talking across screens right now. And that was just one small sliver of how sport was impacted.
Madness.
Go from tell me if I'm wrong, but you go from the biggest ever attendance at a women's sporting event in the world to then no sport whatsoever. Just from a content perspective, with the International Women's T20, was it different? Was there more restrictions? Was there more freedom? Did you have a goal? Was it just all about building towards that crowd?
It probably was in the end when it came to the crowd. That was the main thing, driving attendance at all matches, and making sure that the main final at the MCG was one where people were buying tickets in their thousands and we had a good number ready to go. But my role was more a bit of a support one in that one in different ways. It was from digital marketing through to comms, etc. So I sort of came in at the point of execution rather than the planning and strategy, and kind of really just got to see how the wheels turned under the surface up close, which was great. Most in terms of the content itself, there's an ICC content team that took care of the bulk of that. Our side of it was more the digital marketing side of things, of getting the paid advertising out there to fans through social media and EDMs and everything else to try and drive awareness and attendance. I remember it was a pretty tense night watching in the office when Australia was playing in the semi-final. It was rain affected, and there was a point in time where the Aussies might have had a pretty slow start from memory to the campaign, so there was a little bit of tension of, doesn't matter who makes it, we want it to be a great turnout, but Australia being in will make life that bit easier to get crowds in. So fortunately, the Aussies got up there, and there was a real sense of excitement and achievement for that group, and felt really good for the guys and girls who'd worked on it for 2+ years to get to that point. That's one of the best things. I'm sure you've both experienced that in your own roles, where the team success is just awesome. So when the team that you work on, the sporting team, succeeds, the sense of jubilation's there and shared by everyone. And you guys feel like what that's going to mean for you. Like the next week just opens up. Like to think
What's that like?
Yeah, tell us about it.
I heard a little chuckle from both me and Jules as you said that.
Yeah, well, I feel very lucky to have had a small taste of that in 2018, because there were a couple of non-finals years previously at the Magpies, but it's awesome, and it's worth every second of any job you put in to have that time. Talked before about not letting work be your identity and consume you, and how important that is, but it still is so satisfying. You got nothing to do with the result on the field, but the work and effort. I'm sure you guys are exactly the same. The work and effort that are gone in by so many people through the whole club or the whole business, so that to then see it play out on that stage. So, my two favourite memories from that period of time were winning in Fremantle in round 23 to make it into the top 4 in the last match of round 23. And I think it might have been Brody Myercheck for Collingwood or Josh Thomas. One of those guys kicked what felt like the sealer, and then everyone falling into each other's arms on the side after that. I think, thank God, we just made the top 4. We do get 2 cracks at this. It's great. And then just seeing the looks on people's faces after Collingwood beat Richmond and the prelim when Mason Cox went to town, and just to see volunteers, head of fitness, footy ops and strategy manager, people in tears, physios, just like everyone just grabbing everyone and lifting each other off the ground, and excitement and satisfaction. And also just the thrill of like, not only have we won, but we're into the grand final now. So we get the whole week. We're going to get to experience this together. That was amazing. That was amazing. And even, you know, being able to cover the grand final parade, and I'll never forget turning from where it starts at the Treasury building in Melbourne, and how it turns onto from Spring Street on the Wellington Parade, and to look down there and just see the massive people and the colours, the West Coast gold and blue and the Collingwood black and white, balloons and streamers and jumpers and flags everywhere. And just that second, you felt you float down Wellington Parade as the cars all go along and the players meet the fans. You think this is honestly the best thing you could ever wish to be doing. So yeah, hope for both of you that day isn't far away for Carlton, and it does turn quick. So who's to say, hopefully whatever takes place, that you guys get to taste that, and anyone does in the sport they're working in, because it's not the reason that you do your job, because you can't pin your success or otherwise to that, but geez, it's an amazing experience. And to finish off what I was saying too about like the sense of being burnt out at the end of Collingwood, that was all me. That was all me needing to learn my own lessons and grow as a person. The business was awesome. The people were amazing. I loved every second there, even when I probably was my own worst enemy at times in terms of hours or not being able to switch off. I wouldn't trade a moment of that experience for the world, and love those people, still like family. And it's the same with any place you work with. You end up falling in love with the people, and that's what keeps you there. So no, I wouldn't trade any of that for the world. It was a very special time in 2018, and fingers crossed that you guys get to experience that too, and anyone else who's working in sport and digital get to do that, because you get a front row seat to some of the coolest stuff in the world. You think for a second, why the hell am I sitting here doing this? Like, why me? I shouldn't. Why am I sitting next to this guy to capture this, or filming this with this girl, or whatever? It's crazy. I'm sure you guys have got some surreal experiences you can talk to like that as well.
Yeah, we do. But you're right. We do live a privileged sort of life. Like, the demand is huge. The hours are shocking. There's times where you want to kill each other. But sometimes, like, the perks of, you know, what you get out of it, the people you meet is, like, I've worked in a few places. Barks, you've worked in a few different places as well. The people you meet and the kind of connection that you have on the back of that is second to none, like, because you spend too much time together, basically. Yeah. But
I always go back to as well, like we talk about how real the burnout and the hours and et cetera, but it's far better. I'm sure we've all worked jobs where you don't feel invested. It's far better than working in a job that you're not invested in. Like, that is alone is a great feeling. So that's what I always try to remind myself.
You are checking your phone constantly for a reason. I'll give you that. It's because you want something.
Yeah.
Maybe not always, but you do want something to be popping up. Yeah. Luke, I don't think we could take up any more of your time, but this has been a really this has been a really it's been a really great chat. I think we've covered so many different bases, and you speak so well about everything that you've been through, and so openly. And I think that's a really important thing to people to realise. Like, it is not always glamour. It's not always you just get to go to the footy and make really cool videos or write really cool pieces and do cool interviews. Sometimes there is a grind, and getting out is sometimes the best thing, because it means you can come back in with a fresh perspective. And you've been there from the start, and I'm sure you're going to be there for another 15 to 20 years as whatever you want to do. So thanks for your time today. Thanks for jumping on the show and having a chat, and look forward to seeing more of your work wherever it might be, through the AFL at the moment, but I'm sure there'll be something else. Maybe the chief digital officer at Collingwood one day. You never know.
Who knows?
Collingwood, if you're listening, here's your sign to sign on Luke Mason again.
Thank you, Jules, and thanks, Michael. Thanks for having me on. And I think it's awesome that you guys are doing this podcast, because it does tell stories that resonate with people in the industry. It's definitely a must listen. And I think there's a lot of people in a lot of these ones that seem to come out from a US point of view, but there's been none until this in Australia. And I think it's so great to give the Australian side of this a voice, because as much as we all do look as an industry internationally, overseas to the US and Europe in particular, there's so much great stuff being done in Australia, and that's in the AFL alone, let alone all the different sport over here. Some amazing stuff, and the fact you're able to give all these people and parts of the industry a voice is amazing. You're right, we do work in the best jobs you could ever wish for. Yeah, I feel so grateful to have had the jobs that I've had and the experience that I've had, and again, meeting people like you guys and the kinship that you get through the rest of the industry. It's great to build those relationships, and I think that says a lot about the types of people and the type of work we get to do. So, no, looking forward to listening to the next episode after this, and fingers crossed seeing you guys get to enjoy some of the spoils of Carlton's future successes.
No, we appreciate it, Luke. And just to echo Jules, before, I do applaud your perspective on everything. Like it does seem like, even though you've been through some hard times with this industry, you do understand that now you've got to look after yourself, and you know what to look for. So I'm sure the listeners would also appreciate that. So, no, thank you.
Thanks a lot, Luke.
Thank you, guys.
All right, Julian.
Here we go again.
We just did a ripper intro to the guest. But anyway, we'll quickly that was a fantastic chat with Luke, and again, can't thank him enough. His insight, his perspective. I loved his perspective on the industry, and if I were to summarize, I'd say that reach out to people like him, and he knows how to work in the industry. Yeah,
we were saying in the intro that I forgot to record.
I think I just stole half your lines.
But like it's a good point. Like we can sit here and say that there's people who've worked in marketing or whatever, and they have a better understanding of, marketing content, whatever. But people like Luke, who have been there since day one,
he knows.
They know how it works. Yeah, they know how it works. So reach out to them. If you're listening to this and you don't know who Luke is, find a way to get in touch with him. He's got Twitter. He's got LinkedIn, I'm sure. Just drop him a message and pick his brain.
Or if you can't find him, just ask us.
Yeah, we know where he lives. So.
That's a bit full on.
All right, Barks. So I didn't have an egg of the week.
I do though.
Okay, let's go into it.
All right, I've got my egg of the week. I'm not calling him anything, but West Coast Fever. For those that don't know, netball squad.
Mm-hmm.
So I was reading about this yesterday. I think this is a tweet from yesterday, but basically the game against the Melbourne Vixens had to be cancelled because the Vixens weren't allowed in the state. And if you're not allowed in the state, then you probably can't play.
You can't play a game.
I'm egging them because their media sort of
here we go
position on this. They tweeted out this little thing saying, hi. So this is just announcing that they won't be playing the game this weekend, or it's been cancelled. But I'll read it out. Hi, Green Army. We are devastated that Sunday's game has to be cancelled as the Melbourne Vixens have refused to travel to Perth for our fixture at RAC Arena. And they haven't taken it down. They've copped a lot of shit on this. But
That's bold.
But they were locked. They were locked out of the state. And to further egg them, Jules, they weren't just locked out of the state. So they're not allowed to play this game. But Melbourne Vixens spent what I believe to be around a month interstate.
I was going to say they've been in Queensland or Sydney, to
keep the competition afloat. So they're egging them, but they're also not showing enough. I don't know. There's probably more layers to this, but that's my egg.
Not enough empathy. It's these bloody Western Australians, man.
You got an issue with them?
Well, apart from the guy who used to COVID test us at in the hub, who like
COVID, he assaulted us.
Yeah, shrizzle stick to my brain.
He actually, cool little insight. He actually, I don't know if we're allowed to say this, but
he got moved on.
Yeah, he got reported. I think that's fine.
That was a crime. What he was doing, that was violent.
I don't know if he enjoyed it, but it felt like he did, and I didn't get him, but people
sadistic.
I don't know. Anyway, that's our egg of the week. Our joint egg of the week.
Let's
go on to boss.
Boss of the week. I've got this one.
Good, because I don't have one.
We're going to go to the NFL, and I think a very important thing, something more prevalent in our society these days, but we've seen the first NFL player come out as gay.
Yes.
While playing. So Carl Nassib from
the
now Las Vegas Raiders, I believe they are, formerly Oakland Raiders, has come out as gay, and credit to him. I think it would probably be a lot of pressure, and you've probably got to be ready to be poster boy is the wrong term, but like what's the word for it? Like the media are going to want to talk to you about it. You've got to be willing to be in the limelight for a little bit. And I think it takes a hell of a lot of courage and to recognize that, you know, whenever people want to talk about gay or LGBTQI, I'm going to start again. When anyone want to talk about the LGBTQI community, they're going to lean on you. Yep. And I think it's so good for what it's going to unlock for other players feeling comfortable coming out and feeling more comfortable in their skin, and especially men. I mean, we see it a lot in the amongst women that they're more open and more accepting, and I think it's been too long within the male community that it hasn't come out. So, Carl, I think you're doing God's work. Yep. Well, probably not God's work if you ask the Catholics, but
that's interesting.
But you're doing something great that's going to change the game for a lot of young gay men, women.
Yeah.
And you should be proud.
Absolutely. Normalise it, talk about it. Good boss.
Yeah.
I agree with what you said, Jules. I don't have anything more to add because you were beautifully spoken.
I think we would have had an issue if you just disagreed with it.
We do joke around about fighting on air, but there are some things where we would fight if we had differing opinions.
Correct.
But there you go. Our first time in person and our first joint egg and boss of the week because the other one didn't find one. It's almost like we prepared for this.
I actually don't mind being in person. This is kind of nice.
I don't like it.
Now that we've got the setup, right?
Yeah. No, it's good. All right. Does that do us?
I think that does us. We've spoken for a long time.
Well worth it. Well worth it though. Luke spoke. Great speaker actually, Luke.
Yeah.
Like he just I can't do it and I'm going to stop the sentence because it's a bit ironic, isn't it?
Yeah.
Trying to say how well someone speaks and I can't speak on half the episodes.
Anyway, that's it for this week. Reminder next week, Barks.
Yeah, we've got the big episode that we promised this week, but what is it? So let's remind us.
So you'll be looking at exclusively ultimate frisbee content and trying to find 3 great examples to talk about and maybe even a producer.
Yeah.
Don't have to interview them because I think it's going to be hard, but
bit full on,
at least call them out so we can talk about their work. And I'm going to be going into the world of lacrosse.
Yes, so we chose an interesting sport each to talk about, and you've got lacrosse, and I sent you. Have you looked at that content creator I sent you?
Absolutely not.
I think his name's Tyler something. He produces some high quality shit, and I love that it's for lacrosse. So
high quality shit.
Next week, and we've got to do it all in American accent. All right, next week, be there. Can't wait. Thank you everyone for listening. Hope you enjoyed it. Let us know. Find it on the socials. YouTube, you'll be able to see some high quality footage of their faces.
Hi, Mum.
G'day. All right. So that does it?
I'm on.
No. All right. Thank you. Tune in next week.
Bye.